All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. My name is Zach, as always, and in tonight's episode, I will be recapping that extremely difficult loss that we just witnessed. The Oregon Ducks took to the Indiana Hoosiers, losing 56-22 in the college football playoff semifinal. That was obviously an extremely tough game, and I think last year's results in the Rose Bowl kind of makes it even tougher. But as always, I'm going to try to put a positive spin on it. I know it's going to be really hard to hear, and trust me, we're going to talk about everything that went wrong in the game tonight, or at least a lot of it. I don't know if anyone can cover everything that went wrong. And then we'll kind of be introducing some of the storylines going into the offseason. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. So let's jump right into it. Before I get into the actual analysis of the game, I really want to talk about let's not be brats, okay? We're not Alabama fans. We're not SEC fans. Like, the Oregon Ducks are a phenomenal fan base, and let's act like it, I was reading the subreddit during the game, and there was a lot of negativity about, firing Dan Lanning. Dante Moore should just go to the NFL. Like, we don't even want him. No one cares, blah, blah, blah. None of that is true. Dan Lanning won't be fired. So if you're hoping for that, I'm really sorry to inform you. Dante Moore most likely isn't going to the NFL. However, I think he's still a very good quarterback. I think he just struggles mentally and just isn't mentally resilient. But a lot of 20-year-olds aren't. Like, a lot of people that are these keyboard warriors weren't exactly resilient at the age of 20. And I think Dante Moore has shown a little bit of growth throughout the season mentally. But, it was a really tough game. Like, there needs to be a lot of credit towards Indiana. And I think a lot of people, whenever they are saying stuff like that, like fire Dan Lanning, cut Dante Moore, someone even said that Oregon doesn't deserve a football program next year. Like, guys, can we keep things in perspective of, like, Oregon made it to the Final Four. They were one of the 4 best teams in the country. Dan Lanning has made steps. He's gone at least one step further every single season he's been in Eugene. The first season he couldn't beat Washington, and then he could. Like, he has grown so much while he's been in Eugene. This was the end of his 4th season, 22, 23, 24, 25. End of his 4th season. It took Kirby 6 to win something at Georgia. Kurt Signetti is doing this when he's in his mid-60s, when Dan Lanning is still in his early 40s. Like, I just really hope we can keep things in perspective. This was a phenomenal year. This was a very difficult game, and it's very difficult, on such a big stage. Obviously Ducks fans were, hopes were very high, and I get all that, and it is very disappointing, and it does hurt, and it is hard. But let's celebrate the season that the Ducks had, all the joy, all the momentum that they're going to have going into next year. They just signed the number 2 overall recruiting class in the country. Dan Lanning's going to get some guys out of the portal. They're bringing back a lot of really, young and exciting pieces, and Davison and De'Aaron Hill and Brandon Finney Jr. Nasir Wyatt played out of his mind towards the end of the year. So there's a lot of really exciting things going into next season. So I know it's hard, but try to keep things in perspective, and let's really separate the Oregon Ducks fan base from some spoiled brat fan bases that exist in the college football world, because that's what I'm really trying to do with this YouTube channel is, be different. Don't be the inflammatory, people just for clicks. Like, I love college football. College football, I think, is one of the greatest things, and that's what I really want to share with people. And so that's why I do this, and that's what I hope to build with this community. So with that said, I'll get into the X's and O's now. So primarily we'll be focusing on the first half, because the second half, really the only thing to say about the second half was I was really impressed with the amount of fight that the team showed. I know a lot of people were debating whether or not there was a lot of fight. They were. There were some big blocks. Bryce Betcher, was hitting even harder in the second half than he was in the first half. So that's what I'm really impressed with, and that's what I'm really happy with going into the offseason is, yes, I know Bryce Betcher's gone, but a lot of the pieces that are going to be here next year, we're still fighting, and that's honestly more than I can say happened last year in the Rose Bowl. I think this team gave up a lot earlier last year, and especially by the second half, this team gave up. This team didn't give up. They continued to fight. They continued to take pride, until the last minute, scoring that touchdown, including Dante himself. And obviously, a lot of storylines this offseason and about this game are going to be about Dante Moore. Dante Moore did exactly what he's done the entire season. He has the ability to make some great throws. He has the ability to read a defense. He has the ability, at times to deal well with pressure. And I was really impressed. After he threw the pick six on the first play of the game, he came back and led him on a touchdown drive. Dante Moore wouldn't have done that 8 games ago. When he got rattled against the same Indiana team 8 games ago and got sacked on the first play of the game, he was done for the entire game. There was absolutely no fight, and there was this time around. He just mentally, especially, after that fumble, I think it just kind of rocked him. But I mean, he wasn't the only person. Alex Harkey with that unsportsmanlike in the second half, and I think that just kind of sums up Alex Harkey's time as an Oregon Duck. Really, how do I say this? Has a hard time keeping his cool, and you got to do that, especially when you're down by as many as the Ducks were down. Whenever you're down to your 4th string running back, it's really tough. It's really tough, and especially with a quarterback that's as young as Dante. And that's why there's so much hesitancy for Dante going to the draft, is because of his lack of experience. This was his 20th start. Most NFL teams want 25 starts, especially after NFL busts like Anthony Richardson. They want guys with a lot of starts for this exact reason. Fernando Mendoza doesn't get rocked. In the face of adversity, he honestly gets better. And Dante Moore tonight didn't. And there were multiple times tonight that he didn't, and he looked like a deer in headlights at times. I don't like to make generalized statements. Like someone said, he's looked like a deer in headlights all season. That's not correct. I think he did an incredible job in the Penn State game. He obviously did an incredible job in the Iowa game. Oregon doesn't win the Iowa game without Dante Moore. So Dante Moore, no, he shouldn't go to the NFL. He's not ready yet. He's 20 years old. I believe he'd be drafted at 20. Yeah, so Dante Moore would be drafted at 20 years old, but he would play his first season in the NFL at 21 if he were to go this year, which I don't think he should, and I don't think he will. And so, he's 20 years old. How old's Fernando Mendoza? Fernando Mendoza's 22, and he'll turn 23 during his first NFL season. Fernando Mendoza tonight looked like the Heisman winner, looked like the first overall pick in the NFL draft, and he will be. There's that resiliency and that maturity and that stability that comes with age and experience. And that's why people are drooling over Fernando Mendoza in a vacuum. If you're saying who is more toolsy, on a play-by-play basis, I truly think Dante Moore has a stronger arm. I think he is even more accurate than Fernando Mendoza at his best. I'm strictly talking at their best. The difference is Dante Moore hasn't proven to be able to do it in the face of adversity. And again, I'm not saying Dante Moore's a bad player. I'm not saying that Dante Moore is forever done and that the Ducks should cut him. I'm just saying that this season, like a lot of Ducks fans thought coming into the season, this was going to be a rebuilding year, and that comes with Dante Moore getting more experience. He needed more experience, and he even knew that. That's why he came to Oregon last year and sat behind Dylan Gabriel, was he needed to learn the maturity from a guy like Dylan Gabriel with all those college starts. But you can only learn so much, from the sidelines. You really got to learn it on the field, and that's what he did this year. So I give it at least a 95% chance that Dante Moore comes back to Oregon next year. I'm very excited. I'm not going to, be a doomsdayer. I think Dante Moore just with another, the football season starts in, 7-8 months. That's, he can mature a lot. He's going to mature a lot from this game. And I'm really excited to see what Dante Moore does in the future. And I'm very proud to have him as an Oregon Duck. Let's not get inflammatory and say that he needs to be cut or anything. This team, it also doesn't help not sure that it would have made much of a difference. But Noah Whittington, did he even get a snap, get a touch? I know he was on the field for the touchdown, for the first touchdown play. He did not get a carry and did not get a reception. So they were without Noah Whittington. They were without Jordan Davison. They were without Jaden Lamar because of the transfer portal. They were without, Mekhi Hughes, obviously because of the transfer portal. Without all those guys, it's really difficult, to basically set Dante Moore up to have to beat Indiana with his arm. I think I think Jay Harris played a phenomenal game tonight. His stat line doesn't reflect it. 16 carries for 35 yards, only averaging 2.2 yards per carry. I think he played really well given the circumstances. I really hope he comes back, if I'm being totally honest. And I'm wondering if tonight's performance and the way that he fought for this team can maybe help him fall back in love with this team and see a role on this team. I think Jordan Davison, De'Aaron Hill, and Jay Harris would make a phenomenal three-headed monster for next year, as well as with the young guys that are coming in with this latest recruiting class. And then, the receiving core, Jeremiah McClellan will be back. He was extremely exciting. Jay Harris was great out of the backfield. Kenyon Sadiq is off to the NFL. De'Aaron Hill was great in the receiving game. Malik Benson might get another year of eligibility. I believe Jamari Johnson has another year of eligibility. Obviously, DeCorian Moore struggled a little bit tonight. Jamari Johnson has at least another year of eligibility, so that'll be great to have him on top of five-star Kendra Harrison. This team is going to be really exciting moving forward. And then the defense. I think the defense actually played to the best of their ability. Again, especially talking in the first half. In the second half, it's extremely tough. But in the first half, let's see. I'm going to go to the Gamecast. So, obviously, they didn't give up the first touchdown. That was the pick six. Then, so then the defense did give up the 11-play, 75-yard drive. That happens. That's going to be a scripted drive. You're not going to shut out Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner, Kurt Signetti, Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper. They're two-headed monsters at running back. You're not going to shut them out. So I was fine with that first drive. They showed a lot of fight. Fine with it. And then the next touchdown that they gave up, was a 3-yard after Dante's fumble. So then that's 21-7 right there. And the defense had forced a 3-and-out, which I think was really impressive. Nasir Wyatt played out of his mind, and he's a true freshman. So he's going to have a great amount of growth this offseason. So strictly speaking, in the first half, I think that defense played realistically as best as you can expect. Because even at the half, it was 35-7, subtract 14 points because of Dante's blunders. So then that's 7-21. And that's still a ball game there. Believe it or not, I actually would have believed that. Even at the beginning of the second quarter, after Dante's fumble and touchdown, I thought if they go down and get some points on this drive and make it 14-21, this is still a ball game. And I actually typed that in the subreddit on the game thread. So. It was a really tough ball game, but the defense played as well as you can really expect against Fernando Mendoza. Even they gave up 56 points. Again, subtract out the 14 points from Dante's blunders, and you're at 42-22. That's what you kind of got to expect. You got to expect to give up some points to Fernando Mendoza. You just got to be able to, you got to be able to put up points to kind of combat that. As always, would love to hear from you guys in the chat and comments about what you guys thought. It was a really tough ball game. I can't lie, and I know it hurts, and I know a lot of Ducks fans are going to be really angry about the results. But this team is in good hands with Dan Lanning. He's a young coach. He learned a lot from last year. How old is Dan Lanning? I believe he's 43. Oh no, Dan Lanning is 39 years old. I always forget that he's that young because I just always forget. Dan Lanning is 39 years old. And Curt Cignetti is 64 years old. So Curt Cignetti is 25 years older than Dan Lanning. Like, imagine the experience and the ability that Dan Lanning will have in 25 years. You know, like, which I think Dan Lanning is a good enough coach to win a national championship. You know, and he's learning every year, and that's just a huge skill in itself. Like, that not everyone can, you know, progress every single year, especially in college football. You know, this was a tough game. I can't lie. You know, it's going to be a tough off season. You know, but we learned last year. We got through it, and we had a great season. I know a lot of people are going to say it was a failure of a season. Don't do that. It was a great season. There were, you know, that Penn State win was phenomenal. You know, it was a great game against Washington. That last minute drive against Iowa was phenomenal. There were a lot of happy memories. Dante Moore, you know, played extremely well. And it'll be really great to have him back next year. You know, I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't the happiest with Will Stein. I don't think Will Stein and Tosh Lupoy deserve the amount of hate that they have been getting. You know, I don't think they gave up on this team. I really think that they were fighting with this team to the last minute. You know, because Will Stein, he struggled like this throughout the season, and I was really hoping that he'd be more like the Will Stein that we saw, you know, against Texas Tech and against Washington and against, you know, USC. But he wasn't. He was more of the Will Stein that we saw against, you know, Indiana the first time. And that's just not going to win ball games. No matter who your quarterback is. Especially, you know, I think it was the third drive by the Ducks, and they had the 3 and out. It was 2 rushes by Jay Harris, and got it to like 3rd and 2 or something, 3rd and 3. And then they ran it again, and it got stuffed. And it was 3 straight handoffs to Jay Harris, and it got stuffed by the 3rd time. And it's like, that's not going to work against this Indiana team. Like, you got to air it out with Dante Moore. You got to kind of keep them on their toes. You can't just let them commit to the run up the middle. So while Will Stein, I don't think called his best game, I don't think it has anything to do with being the head coach at Kentucky. You know, I think he was a great coordinator by the Ducks. You don't have a top 10 offense with a poor offensive coordinator. And likewise, you don't have a top 10 defense without a great defensive coordinator. So best of luck to both of them. You know, they did great things for the Ducks. I'm really excited to see what the next coordinators do. They're going to have a lot of talent, and Dan Lanning's going to learn a lot of lessons from this game. And the Ducks will be even better for it next year. You know, they're losing some guys to the NFL. You know, I think Matayo Uiagalelei has a decent chance of coming back. But, you know, obviously the big ones are going to be a lot of the offensive line Oregon will have to replace. They lose Kenyon Sadiq. They're going to lose Amari Washington. Most likely Dylan Thieneman's gone. There's a lot of talk about him being a first-round pick, so most likely he's gone. Bryce Fetcher's running out of eligibility. Jerry Mixon Jr., I believe, Jerry Mixon is also running out of eligibility. So there's going to be some turnover, but overall, I think this team will be better next year. I think Dan Lanning's going to be a better coach. He matured a lot from last season, and I can't wait to see the way that he matures going to next season. So with that, I think I'm going to sign off for the night. Thank you guys so much. It really means a lot, all the support that you guys have given the channel, and letting me do this for my first full season. I'm going to keep posting content all off season long, so make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like and comment. Love to hear from you guys. And with that, I'm going to sign off for my last live stream of the off season. Thank you guys so much. My name is Zach with the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media, and I will catch you guys next time.